Get you.
All right, we're on.
All right, welcome to the Whitman Finance Committee meeting. Today is Tuesday, November 10th. I'll go over the agenda while we're waiting for two other committee members to join us. Today we'll have meeting minutes that were sent in advance from September 8th, October 6th, and October 27th. The reserve fund sits at $49,647. Public forum is suspended due to the COVID-19 limitations. If somebody wants to get a hold of the Finance Committee, welcome Ralph and Al. They can certainly give me an email at randerson@whitman/ma.gov. Under new business today, we're going to have budget manager meetings. We have police coming in at 7:15, and we have the building department at 7:45. Under old business, we'll hear from subcommittee reports and have discussions on our placeholders of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District assessment and possibly non-mandated busing, communications, and that is pretty much it for the agenda. And if anybody has anything they want to add, we'll certainly have an opportunity at the end of the meeting. So while we're waiting for our budget managers to come in to join us for our two meetings, we could just go to previous meeting minutes, if that is all right with everybody. See if we can knock out a couple of these meeting minutes. So the meeting minutes, does anybody not have a copy of the meeting minutes and didn't receive them in advance? If you can, raise your hand. So the meeting minutes from September 8th, which one's been hanging out there for a little while. It's just a one-page meeting. One page, let's see.
Not really.
No, not really. It's more like 4 pages.
331, 1, 2. Yeah, it's actually 3 pages. So the first page, called to order at 7:01. The only one that was absent was Ralph for this particular meeting. And we had meeting minutes from July 7th, 14th, 21st, and 27th. So on first page, those 4 meetings were brought up and voted. Anything that you find on that page that you need to make amendment to? Additions, deletions? We'll move on to the second page, which is listed as page 331. So discussion included at 7 o'clock. We were reorganizing the committee at that point. And then on the second to last paragraph, there was a discussion regarding the minimum local contribution, beginning with Kathleen Otina. And on the final paragraph, there was a question from Ms. Conley about the financial data that supported the statement that Hanson could not afford the full assessment. Anything else on that second page? Anybody would like to amend? Okay, and then the final page is listed as page 332. So the discussion began with the subcommittee reports will now include the Whitman Middle School committee going forward. And then we were, Dave Cadero had a statement that was incorporated into the meeting minutes. And near the bottom of that page, Ms. Connolly noted that the upcoming budget cycle, she would like for all members to follow the handbook and regarding the Madden recommendations. And that the final paragraph right before a motion to adjourn discussed that the town accountant would be playing a bigger role in the budget process. Does anybody have any amendments on that page? Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept. The final page actually is just a signature line on the final page, page 333. So seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the meeting minutes from September 8th.
I move the
Okay,
minutes.
we have a motion. Looking for a second.
Second.
Okay, second. Further discussion? Okay, all in favor, roll call. John?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Chuck?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Ralph?
Ralph, actually,
I
you
should
were
abstain
absent,
because I
so I
wasn't
would,
there.
you're abstaining.
Yeah.
Al?
Yes.
Rosemary?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So that is that meeting. And we have two other meeting minutes. Again, if you want more time or you didn't have an opportunity to review, please raise your hand and we can entertain a motion to table if that's the will of the committee. Otherwise, we'll move to the October 6th meeting minutes, which are actually listed as the October 8th meeting minutes. So I would suggest that the first edit for that particular meeting minutes would be to reflect the date change. Samantha, did you get that?
Yep, done.
Okay. So it starts off with page 334. And basically the first discussion was to establish liaisons to the various town departments. And then at the final paragraph on that first page, Ken was discussing which budgets were received by that particular date. Are there any additional amendments on that first page, which is listed as page 334, other than the change to the date? Okay, moving to the next page. Page 335. So the discussion continued with Ken working on revenue forecasting with the local receipts. And John Galvin was discussing the Whitman Middle School Feasibility Committee, his upcoming meeting. Then there was a discussion regarding school committee. And the second to last paragraph on that page begins with Kathleen discussing the town of Hanson allocating $1.3 million to capital projects. And the final paragraph was a communication received from the Board of Health. So there's one spelling correction on that third paragraph where Mr. Galvin stated that the first meeting for the Whitman Middle School Feasibility Committee, just changing that feasible to feasibility, was the only thing I saw on that page. Samantha, did you get that?
I'm looking for it. Hold on.
So third paragraph, first line, it just basically says the
Got it.
okay. Okay, any further amendments? And then the final page, page 336 is again, just the motion to adjourn. I will entertain a motion then to accept the meeting minutes from October 6th,
So moved.
2020. You have a
Second.
motion and a second. Further discussion? Okay. On the motion, John,
Yes.
Dave,
Abstain?
Kathleen,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, thank you. That's the second of the meeting minutes that were provided in advance by Samantha. And then the final meeting minutes are that were submitted for review and adoption are from October 27th. Does anybody need more time to review those meeting minutes? This is kind of a, yeah, this one is 4 pages. And it starts with the call to order. Absent for this particular meeting was Rosemary, And the discussion was at the beginning to accept meeting minutes. And then at 7 o'clock, Mary Holland joined the meeting to discuss the Council on Aging budget. And her opening comments are part of that first page. Any other amendments for page 337? Okay, moving to page 338. Again, with Ms. Holland discussing the budget. She departed at 7:15. Then Dave Cadero provided an update on the Building, Facilities, and Capital Expenditure Committee. Then John Galvin provided an update on the Whitman Middle School Feasibility Committee. Josh McNeil then joined the meeting at 7:24 and did an opening on the discussion of his technology budget. Any questions or amendments on that page? Seeing none, we'll move on to page 339. Still discussing the technology budget. Al Cafferty asked if employees had access to social media websites. At 7:57, Mr. McNeil departed. Then Ken Lytle joined the meeting to discuss the accountant budget. And 8:08, Mr. Lytle departed. And then discussions in the final paragraph were about the upcoming meetings with other town departments and the expectations of the liaisons to introduce themselves with scheduling the next meeting. Any questions, edits for that page? Seeing none, we'll move to the final page, which is page 340. And this was the discussion of the reserve fund transfer that came before the committee and the vote. And then Kathleen noted that she attended the last school committee meeting and described the meeting. And at 8:25 p.m., there was a motion to adjourn. Anything that needs to be added to that particular page? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to accept the October 27th meeting minutes as presented.
I
So
moved them.
moved.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second by Ralph. Okay, further discussion on the adoption? John,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Abstain.
abstain, and I'll vote yes. So we have finished the meeting minutes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Samantha, for getting those meeting minutes out. So it brings us right up to date where we are now. So again, referring to the agenda, where reserve fund has been amended following that reserve fund transfer that we approved at our last meeting. So as far as the budgets go, the first meeting we have is with the police at 7:15, and we should have somebody logging in. John, anybody?
No, sir.
Okay, so the police budget, John, I'm gonna impose on you if you can, to, and before you do, if we just have a quick discussion about perhaps sharing documents. We did run into a little bit of a problem with the technology budget. A little too much information was shared of a sensitive nature, and Josh McNeil was concerned enough that we asked Whitman Hanson Cable Access to obscure parts of the document so it would prevent cyber criminals from accessing sensitive information of the town. So again, we appreciate the action of the Whitman Hanson Cable Access, who moved pretty quickly to make sure that that document was no longer shareable in any subsequent airing of the meeting. So,
Chief Hanlon's coming in now.
okay. So just as a future kind of thing, let's keep in mind that all the committee members receive all the documentation from each town department as it is made available to the chair. All of the budgets are sent initially to Ken, who is working to keep a current copy of Article 2 as we move forward, but just like I said, we'll be aware of the sensitivity of certain documents and maybe refer to your own copy in occasions where we can't share the document on this platform. Does anybody have any questions about that? Like I said, I think it was a pretty unique situation where that information was something that wasn't shareable. That's all. I think mainly the fact that any documents that we have for deliberations with this committee are available to the public. So, with that, welcome, Chief. I don't know if
He's not muted, but we're not hearing him.
We ran into this problem earlier with somebody.
Check your volume on your microphone. Oh, you're muted now. Unmuted. In a little bit. You hearing us okay, Chief?
So, Johnny, maybe go through the same thing you went with
Go
Ken.
through the same thing. So the bottom left-hand corner of the Zoom, there's a microphone icon. And if you click on it, it will open up and it'll allow you to, the top, select a microphone and making sure that you have a microphone selected that's going. And then you may want to check your volume of your, I don't know, you're probably on a PC or on a Mac. Oh, can't answer me, I guess.
Is that any better?
There we go.
got you now.
Look at that. I'm 2 for 2 today.
There you
How about
go.
that? I
It
should.
wasn't exactly as you said, but that was I clicked on the mute section over there.
Oh, there you go. All right.
So this is the new camera
All right.
IT. So we're on my desktop anyways, and I'm wearing my mask because I have Deputy Chief Bombardier and Administrative Assistant Tracy Briggs with me. So
Okay.
Okay, well, welcome all. We appreciate you being part of the initial meeting with budget managers for the Finance Committee review of your budget. Everybody on the committee, I think you're familiar with. We also have Ken, the accountant, here with us tonight. So we will open it up to you to kind of start if you want to just give a general review of your budget. And we do have, John is available to share if you want for us
Kathy's
to share
gonna-
the screen with your budget on it as you review it.
Kathy's going to come back in. She got kicked out.
Okay, thanks.
Kicked
Rosemary.
out. Ouch. Okay.
Okay, so some of the items here for Article 2 are kind of standard based on contractual issues for chief, deputy chief, and so on. And then other things like the all other services line. I think I explained that in my Word document, if everyone received that as well, to my Article 2. So in line 117 expense, I put it in a 2% increase because, I mean, nothing ever decreases in price anymore. And then based on John Madden's report, based on his findings in the town, one of the recommendations was to add a cruiser in to the expense line, which they run about $60,000 from soup to nuts with all the lights and equipment, computers, everything else that goes in them. And that way we don't have to request it as a separate article year after year after year, because we get at least one every year. That seems to be the trend. Sometimes we need more than one, but that's certainly not every year. We try and just do one at a time. But they break down as they're used so much. So keeping them fresh, we've done pretty well with our maintenance issues with the cruisers, so they last a little bit longer than, you know, the standard like 3 years. If we were doing new cruisers after 3 years, we'd probably be requesting 3 or 4 of them to try and stay within that 3-year frame. So we keep them probably a lot longer because the guys treat them very well for the most part. And we got a pretty good maintenance program going on here. So we only run about 1 a year. And then occasionally there's a second one, which I wouldn't add in money that we don't need. So $60,000 is roughly what a cruiser will cost. We did not go up in occupancy or utilities. That seemed to be one of the line items that stayed pretty constant. So moving down to a couple of other things. The all other services line. So every year since I was deputy chief, when Scott Benton was the chief, we would come into the finance committee and he would explain how many shifts that were not able to be covered based on the reduction that I think occurred probably that previous fiscal year. And that number I transposed into an average salary and then did the calculations out from there. So if you look at, let me get my other sheet. So voted 2021 in all of the services was $2,520,994. But then there was an additional article that would cover the 2% raise extension on the union contract. And that came to $50,420, which was approved, which brought that total to $25,71,414 was the total. So we did not fill this past fiscal year that 271 shifts. And that would bring us up to level funding. So we are cutting out that many shifts every year. It's right around there. We actually don't cover a lot more, but some of them are unable to be filled by contract. So personal days aren't covered, and some other shifts aren't covered. So that number came out to 129,776 is 271 shifts. Now, just to put that in perspective, an officer works 240 shifts during the course of a full year. Okay, so last fiscal year, I came back with the number that we did not fill, which was 363. So 240 shifts is one body for a complete year. And then half of that is 120. So 360 is a body and a half. So we're missing out on 1.5 officers every year. I think last year I kind of boiled it down in a little bit different format. And I said, it would be like the entire department taking a full month off. So if there's 4 officers per shift, right, times 3 shifts a day, times 30, also equals 360. So that's what we're missing out on based on the all of the services line. And that's what I'm looking to try and get back. So I added in the amount for to compensate for that, which turns out to be that 129,776. So that's how I came to the all other services number. And that is a difference of $234,220. So that's how I arrived at that number. Now, running short shifts isn't optimal for obvious reasons. Officer safety is one of them. If we send one officer to a call that might need 2 or 3, they're left out in the wind to fend for themselves until backup gets there. Sometimes if we're shorthanded, that might be from another town. And that's happened, it's happened recently. So The other thing is from a citizen perspective. This town, I think, has come to enjoy the response from the police department based on the number of officers we have here. And I'd like to continue that. So I don't want any shifts to be short. The fact of the matter is somewhere between my number and that, the number from last year, it's just going to be a reduction in shifts, if that makes any sense. So that's where we get to that number in particular. The only other thing that we have is the crossing guard line. And I think that got overlooked last year. So I increased that as well. And that in Article 2 is line number 179, but it falls under the police department. So that's it in a nutshell. So just last night we had on the 4 to 12, we basically ran out of bodies, even though we had a full complement of officers. So it does happens on a more frequently than I like it to. So that's how I get to that, all of the services line.
Okay, Chief, thank you for that overview. I just with respect to all of the services line, so with your budget, it plugged into Article 2, it represents a 7.1 increase over the previous year. So that's not reflected in the budget document that you submitted because the format isn't there with percentages on that particular form, but it is on our Article 2. So just for perspective, that unfilled shift line or that expense for the unfilled shift line has in past years been attributed to, as the former chief put, his skin in the game. So would you say if there was a mandate or a need for you to pare your budget, would that be where your skin in the game would be, or would it be somewhere else within that budget?
No, it's really difficult to pare it down from any other line. That's where it would come down to. And, we've used this as a mechanism to not lay off bodies. So that body, that 1.5 bodies that I'm talking about over the course of a year, we're just not filling shifts as opposed to laying 1 or 2 people off. That's the skin in the game that the former chief was referring to. So I would go as far as to say, I'd do that as much as I could until I couldn't do that anymore, and then would have to lay somebody off. So barring that happening, so that's where we're looking for the number that we're at currently to just, maintain and full staffing. I know that might be unrealistic given this budget climate with everything going on. So, but I just wanted to give it a number, and then for your review to just be able to say, okay, this is how it impacts us directly.
Okay, John, you had a question? Or a
Yeah,
comment?
question, Chief. So this 1.5 bodies you're talking about, if say the town funded this at town meeting, would you actually hire another police officer, or are you filling this shifts with overtime with the current staff?
No, it wouldn't be. It would be filling the vacancies left by the budget shortfall to fill the overtime. I wouldn't be asking for more bodies.
So you currently have officers that don't get a full week's worth of work because they're short shifting, or
Nope.
everybody getting full amount of shifts? I don't understand how we're short all these shifts, and if the guys aren't getting a full work week, it would be overtime that we're filling this with, then, correct?
Right. So depending upon how many, so there's personal days, for example, there's vacation days, there's
Right.
sick days. Normally, I would fill as many of those as I could to keep the shift at full staffing.
Okay.
So for this current shift, even if I was down a body, if someone took a vacation day, they're still going to get their pay, their base pay,
Right.
right? And then I would
Okay.
fill that with overtime. So now we're still down a body. Now, can I fill that body and put, 4 on the shift, or as many as, to keep it fully staffed, or do I have to drop down to something less than that?
All
And
right.
that's the
I
challenge.
understand. I understand better. Thank you.
So Chief, just to elaborate one more time, and I don't want to beat this to death, but what is the cost of that 271 shifts?
129,000. Yep, I just. 129,776.
1297.
76.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for the chief regarding his budget and the supporting document that he sent along? Anybody else have questions regarding the budget? Oh, Dave, yes.
Hi, Chief. On average, how many, for like maybe the past 3 years, how many shifts per year have been unfilled on average for the past 3 years?
Total, or just the ones that are affected by the budget? So some of the shifts, like I can get a grand total of shifts that we didn't fill, and that could be for a number of reasons. So personal days aren't filled by contract. So that number, depending upon what we look at, is in the 700 range. So right now we have 2 people out, one's out IOD and one's out extended sick, and they're both on the midnight shift. So at some point I don't have a choice. I'm going to have to fill to get to a safe number of officers on the road for the officers as well as the citizens. So, it's varied along the way. So, but usually like a minimum is like 300, 350 upwards of 700.
Okay.
That answer your question, Dave?
Yeah, let me see if I can ask you a different way. Taking out contractual absences and unforeseeable, I forget the acronym that you use, but injuries or out for a reason.
Yeah, injured on duty, yep, IOD,
Yep.
sorry.
Negative. So taking those 2 out of account, so you think the average would be about 300? Would that be on the
It was 363, as I explained to the board last year. This year it was 271.
Okay.
And the year before, I'm not sure what that was. It was probably in that ballpark.
Perfect. Thank you.
So that those figures wouldn't be hard to get, because typically when the chief does present the budget, even the prior chief, the regular presentation included the amount of shifts that went unfilled or were going to go unfilled. I think is just a regular accounting that used to be made during this process.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. All right. Anybody else with you tonight, Chief, that wants to add anything to the budget
Did I miss
discussion?
anything? They give me thumbs up. They said I did okay. I'm not sure
I
how
think
you
you
guys
did
feel
great.
about it, but
We appreciate having all the information in a timely manner as well. Again, we have quite a challenge in front of us as the budget crisis here in the town of Whitman has not healed itself. So, we'll be talking about ways in order to close a budget gap that we have already with the submissions that we have to date. So
yeah.
we have placeholders for some things, and we do know that we're going to be coming up short, and how we're going to close that gap is, something that'll be part of the discussion for the next several months.
Right.
But we hope to keep you in the loop with the process as it moves along. We hope to communicate back through our liaison, and as always, our communication line here is always open. So if you have questions, you're more than welcome to call the liaison or myself at any time.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing I wanted to add was, so one of the capital items was a water heater. And that's really, I think, all I submitted. So in trying to just understand that the town is in the circumstances we are. But I think I'm going to be able to withdraw that. I just want to get one more opinion and make sure. It looks like we would be able to get that water heater on fairly short notice, so it wouldn't necessarily be an issue. So we might not
Okay,
have the
so
need to fill it.
Dave Cadero, our vice chair, is also the chairman of the Capital Expenditure Committee, and the information that you will be bringing to that committee is considered in its entirety as well before it's moved back toward the Finance Committee for discussion about funding. So,
Right.
Again, any information you have on capital projects, if you could forward them along to Dave and the Capital Committee, that would be great.
It will do.
All right. Anything else? Anybody? Any comments? All right, Chief, thank you for your time, and we look forward to meeting you throughout the budget cycle.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a
Thanks,
good
Chief.
night.
Thank
Good
you.
night. All right, John, we have anybody queued up for coming in for our next budget meeting?
No, we do not. It's a little early yet. It's only 7:37, so
Okay,
that was
so-
scheduled for 7:45. I'll keep an eye on it.
All right. So the building committee is scheduled to come in at 7:45. So in advance of that, we could move to the report of subcommittees. Dave, would you like to give a little review of the capital expenditure
Sure.
buildings
So,
committee?
let's see. Our last meeting was last Thursday. I had a schedule here somewhere, and I forget the date. 11/5, I think it was. We were notified that Dan Salvucci, the Board of Selectmen member, had resigned from our committee, and Justin Evans has been appointed the Board of Selectmen member. Fred Small is lined up to be, Board of Selectmen are lined up to discuss his appointment as a full member, full at-large member. Lisa Green, the interim town administrator, has been appointed as the town administrator member. So that leaves us with one open seat. As you heard, Chief Hanlon, as you can see, he submitted a capital request for a water heater. As he said, he might withdraw that. We haven't received anything from the schools yet. We're anticipating something early this week. The DPW has requested items including a lawnmower, a one-ton dump truck, a dump truck with plow, a truck lift, supplemental funds to Chapter 90, sidewalk repair, and a field gravel grader, equaling about $450,000, with some of the anticipated resources coming from the cemetery proceeds and raise and appropriate. The technology department has requested almost $26,000 in capital. That includes 2 new copiers and some transfer of funds to technology capital stabilization. The fire department has requested approximately $120,000 worth of capital. That's a new vehicle, equipment, and to redo the armory roof. That's the police department. The sewer and water, they have a request out there for a Chevy Colorado. We've just received right now, currently in the feasibility study phase of the forced sewer main replacement. Some preliminary numbers have come in. So they're hoping to get that project up and running, funding for that project through town meeting, which the funding source would be water and sewer earnings. I haven't clearly looked at, I haven't looked at detail what the numbers are right now, but he provided an estimate of 8 to 25 million. I think that number is going to come in right in the middle of, or on the low end of that range. And obviously the DPW garage, they're currently in the feasibility study of that. And they're anticipating requesting funds from town meeting in upwards to 6 million. Our committee, we've discussed last year that may go as high as 9 million. And that's it. DPW, sewer, water, technology, department, and nothing from the school just yet. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Dave on the Building Facility Capital Expenditure Committee? Okay, I know you have, go ahead, Al.
Dave, they give me any inclination of pricing wise on the roof on the building for
We're
the,
estimating it right now. They have an estimate out there is $35,000.
my thoughts are, we'll ask Bob Carl later on. What are the intentions, Rick? Does anybody know what they want to do with that building and what's actually inside the building?
Well, right now, the housing, the fire department has equipment in there, right, Dave?
Yeah, right. As far as I know, fire department utilizes it for equipment.
Any other departments use it at all, like a school or police or anything, recreation or?
I don't know the answer to that.
Rosemary had a question.
It's my understanding that it's not just the fire department that has equipment there. Selmac and other related, I might be saying that wrong, but do we have funds for the other town, the equipment that's shared with the other towns? Do they rent that space, or are we
Well,
doing
we can
that?
ask Bob as the facilities
I will.
manager. I mean, he
I
might
will.
probably have some more insight on the use of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome, Bob.
There he is.
Hey there, how are you?
Good. So why don't we save that for after his presentation? We can ask some specific questions about that building. Does that sound right?
Sounds good, Rick.
Okay. Very good. Well, we appreciate you tuning in. You are familiar with everybody here on the board. We'll let you go right into your review of your current budget submission, if you will.
Okay, again, my budget, my salary went down because I took advantage of the retirement incentive. And in fiscal year 2022, that goes backwards. So it's, was actually $9,175 was taken out. So the requested for 2022 fiscal year is $68,813 for my salary. The only other thing that's remarkable was the auto expense. We brought that up to $2,000 this year because we've got some problems with the vehicle I'm using. Other than that, everything's pretty much the same.
Okay, so the salary item on line 145 is related to the 555 contract that no longer is in effect, and you have reverted back
Correct.
to the original salary level.
Correct. My original plan was to retire this year, and I've decided to stay on for at least another year.
Okay. All right. So again, the inspection service budget starts at line 145 and goes to line 156. I just wanted to check on the Article 2 as far as the percentages. I didn't have an opportunity to do that earlier. So,
Minus 3.7.
okay, so the line, the total has gone down 3.7%,
Correct.
much in part due to the 11.8% reduction in the director's salary. So the auto expense added some, but everything else, the administrative assistant is listed at 3%. Can you elaborate on
Yeah,
that?
she has a step increase this year.
Okay. So that's a contractual step increase. That,
Yes, it is.
okay. All right, so everybody received this budget in advance to have a look. So has anybody any additional questions for Bob regarding his budget? All right, you want to talk a little bit about the online permitting? Is that started the process?
Yes, we are, for the most part, all the information that we need to get to the vendor has been delivered. We had a quick view of the site last week, and we should be online within the next 4 weeks. And that's a huge difference. It's a big deal for us.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah, and I think they're trying to do some of this permitting software with COVID money.
They are, yeah.
Which,
Right.
which
Yeah, that's our
which would be
understanding.
really-
So, as far as the approval goes, there's somewhat of a question on whether or not pre-budgeted items are eligible for reimbursement under the COVID guidelines. So it will be interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, either way, Mr. Chairman, it's going to make a big difference for this office. It's the
Absolutely.
amount of paperwork we're generating is just, it's getting a little bit out of hand. And I think I've already got this same program over in Hanson, so I'm familiar with how it works. And I can tell you that it's going to make a big difference. It's good for the residents as well. They can fill out permit applications and pay online from home.
Excellent.
It should be
Awesome.
a big success. Yeah.
All right. Anybody have any other questions regarding the budget or the upcoming online permitting program? Okay, so in the discussion previously, we had a review from Dave Cordero, who's the chairman of the Building Facility Capital Expenditure Committee. And the question regarding the building behind the fire station, the former armory. Can you give us a little update on what the building is used for currently and regarding specifically the cost to re-roof the building? So
yeah, I've got calls out to 2 different roofers. We've got prices in the past, but they're now outdated. I've got a call into, like I said, 2 different roofers, and I still haven't heard back from them. But I think it's something that I last went up there and looked at it. The rubber roof the flat roof portion of it seemed okay. And I did have somebody come in and fix some of the 3-tab shingles that were blown off. So for right now, there's no roof leaks, but it's getting to a point where it's critical that we get this thing done.
I remember the situation we had similarly with the library when we had the warranty issue with the shingles, and it took quite a few trips up there to maintain the roof. So the majority of the roof there that is asphalt shingles, and the recommendation will probably be to replace them with architectural asphalt.
Yeah, we'll go with the 30 or 40-year shingle. You know, it's funny that you brought that up tonight because I had called a roofer 4 weeks ago, and he said he was going to get the estimate to me. I've called him back and he hasn't returned the call. So unfortunately, these guys are so busy that they're not getting back to me.
Okay, so
But I have I have a call into a local guy that has supposedly gone out there and measured it, and then I called another commercial roofer from Halifax, Merrick Engineering, and they're going to take a good look at the membrane roof and give me an idea how much life that has left.
Okay, so you'll be bringing those recommendations to the Capital Committee. Al brought it up tonight, asking the specific questions about the use of the Armory building itself.
Yeah, and just so this committee knows, there was a time when I had done a takeoff for making that part of the food pantry, and that never, Frank Lanham never pursued that once I gave him the prices for that. So there's been a lot of talk, but I think for now, it's going to stay as part of the overflow, mostly for the fire department.
Okay, Al, go ahead.
Well, if you have time, can I actually take a view of that building? I'd like to take a look at that building in the whole school, if that's possible. What's inside of it, the structure? I have a real estate background and a construction background as well.
So you're talking about that and the Park Ave school?
Yeah, if it's available.
Yeah, the Park Ave school, we've had it boarded up and everything shut down. The electricity's off over there.
Sure.
I was in there. I was in there last year. The structure of that building is good, but and my feeling is that maybe someday that could become a senior center, but they'd have to strip everything out of that. The whole roof and the insulation in the roof is all junk. So I got a feeling that the cost would be cheaper to probably build a new building, but that's kind of a shame.
How about the Armory? I'd love to see what's in there.
Yeah, are you available during the daytime?
Yeah, I could be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So
All right,
maybe you
so
can work out that schedule
Well,
with
I'd like
Bob.
to go with you, actually. It's my understanding that other towns are using it. We're using it for Selmac and other things. And if that's the case, are we renting it? Or are we just?
I haven't been in there in a little while, but yeah, I could talk to the fire chief
And
about what
if other
exactly
towns
is
are
in there.
benefiting and then we're paying and there's no price.
Yeah,
I'd like to have a
Yeah.
conversation.
yeah, I can get in there. Unfortunately, next week I am really busy with liquor license inspections and assembly inspections, churches and all that. But I think the week after that I'll have some time.
Yeah, I'll give you a call. I'll give you a call, Bob. I'll work within your schedule. I have no problem. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and it'll be in the morning. Best time for me is between 9 and 10:30.
Perfect. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate
And
it.
Al, if you could CC me on the communication, I can put it out to the rest of the
will.
board if there's anybody else that's available and interested in seeing the building.
Well, I got to talk to recently get my password reset for the town government email to hook up with
I
mine.
think because I'd like to go because it pertains to the fire department's needs, and I want to take a look.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think mainly the fire department uses it because of its proximity to the fire station.
Well, I think they were
And
thinking
also,
about using the
obviously,
front
they have a
section.
space needs issue as well, so.
Yeah, they were thinking
Yeah, there
about
was
using the front for something.
Yeah, there was a time that they were going to use that for maybe a workout center or a gym. And they were for a little while, but it needs a lot of work before it's actually serviceable.
Right. Okay. All right. We'll certainly have another conversation about it. And it's probably one of those things that it should be on the boilerplate for the strategic plan, the utilization of town-owned buildings that are sitting vacant. Al,
Absolutely.
much like the Park Ave School, as you mentioned.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
thank you for
Yeah,
keeping
my
it on
biggest-
the front burner too. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so with respect to Bob, we appreciate the fact that you provided a budget and all of the information for us to consider. One of the things that was spelled out in the budget mailing that apparently was missed by most budget managers was the request that salaries be level funded. Ken, do you recall the budget mailing is specifically indicating the budget managers to put no increases for their salary lines? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
As far as
and
I
I
know, there
did
was
follow.
only one department that did that. So that's something that we just have to talk about a little bit as we move forward. So just to let you know, we're working on ways to close a budget gap that we have with the submitted budgets as they stand now. And we'll certainly be in contact with you.
So just so this board knows, I've had a discussion with other department heads and they were putting in 2%. That's the only reason I did it. And I didn't want to, mostly for the other inspectors, I didn't want to leave them out of it.
Right. Yep. No, understood. So I did have a conversation with Lisa Green today when I went into town hall to empty the mailbox and asked that selectman, that she mentioned that to selectmen. At some point, as in past years, the town administrator or the interim town administrator will have a manager meeting at some point, I would imagine, as we did last year, as you recall, and talked about, everybody being on the same page with respect to salaries and the budget. So we're just to be clear, we're nowhere near getting over the hurdle of this budget crisis in the town. So we're going to be looking for support from every department. That's all.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. Thank you very
Well,
much.
the
again.
good news, Rick, is that the number of permits that are going out that will lead to a lot of new growth is substantial. And I think I explained that last year during the same type of meeting. We are pretty much on track to be the busiest 3 or 4 years that this office has seen since I've been here. And there's a lot of other permits going out for renovations to existing homes. So it's, I'm doing 9 or 10 inspections a day. There's a lot of new condos, a lot of new homes being built, and they're selling for more money than what the builders are asking. So that's good.
Yeah, that's a good problem. I don't think you'd be hard pressed to go driving around the town without seeing some of this new growth. So,
Yeah,
John, you
no,
had
I was talking to the owner of the new condos up the top of South Ave on Plymouth Street. They went for, the last unit they sold went for $30,000 over asking. So that's a good sign for the stability of Whitman.
right.
Bob, real quick, do you, I know this is a tough question, but on average, do you think that this year is equal to what we did last year or going to be greater than what we did last year? I mean, I know it's hard with the new growth because a lot depends on when they finish it, but you know, we estimated 300,000 last year in new growth and it came in at 391. I think we're still estimating 300,000 again this year. You know, do you feel comfortable with that, or do you think geez, I think it might be more, or I just kind of
I
going
think
fishing here.
it's going to, yeah, I would say that's going to be about the same as last year. The thing that's hard for me to judge is if I issue a building permit for renovations of a kitchen or bathrooms and somebody finishes the basement, it doesn't necessarily bring their property value up.
Right.
So I can't always count that as new growth. So probably 5 out of 10 inspections I do won't affect new growth at all in this town. But there's enough new construction that I'm confident that it will.
Okay.
The condos across from McLaughlin Chevrolet, we just issued a certificate of occupancy for 4 of those units today. The ones at the top of South Ave on Plymouth Street, I think that there's 8 units that are occupied now. So that's all part of this year's new growth. And things aren't slowing down. As you could see, Mr. Egan had torn down the bank building in downtown Whitman. There's new storefronts downtown where Supreme Pizza is, and there's new commercial buildings up on Bedford Street, up near the Dunkin' Donuts towards East Bridgewater. There's 2 more going in, and there's 2 more nearly completed.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're really busy. Things are good.
Okay, Rosemary, you had something?
Just for clarification, renovating a new bathroom would not create new growth, but adding a second bathroom or more bedrooms would, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Anybody? As we mentioned, Bob, Al is the liaison to your department from this committee. You're more than welcome to contact him as soon as he gets his email straightened out. Or you can certainly get a hold of me in the meantime if there's anything that you need to get to the committee, updated information. Again, we are working closely with Ken this budget cycle as well to get the numbers in early and make recommendations so we could have a real solid plan going into the spring.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
All right, well, enjoy your Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much. And
Thanks,
you do the
Bob.
same.
Appreciate it. I'll give you a call next week, Bob.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, take care.
Thanks. Okay, so again, it's good to get information directly from the budget managers as we try to make some sense out of this budget year. Like there's going to be some challenges. So Ken, would you like to just give a little bit of an update on the budget submissions or anything else that you'd like the committee to know?
Yeah, I guess in rapid fire. So in the budget document that you guys have, I adjusted the notes column, column D on the sheet. So those now pertain to this year's items. Anytime I happen to see something that I feel like would necessitate a change that is big enough or important enough, I will try to note it there, and you can scroll down to the bottom for the numbered notes. I had tried doing this with a column section off to the right, and it definitely didn't work, so I'm borrowing Frank's idea by using the notes and putting those down in the bottom. As far as the local receipts go, that was a bit of a journey last week. So in helping the assessor get the tax recap ready, in order to meet the excess levy to ensure that there is as little as possible that's outstanding. I needed to adjust the local receipts to reach that amount. And in this case, for our benefit, it wound up going up substantially, which can be dangerous. But I feel that there is enough backup that I have that I can validate the numbers that we're using. For motor vehicle excise and for waste fees, what we had been using, and I use the term we loosely because I was part of it, but what we had been using in the past was last year's figure and sort of basing that into what we're going to collect the following year. That can create kind of a wave because, I mean, for one, in FY19, the trash bill went up from I believe it was 260 to 285. So obviously using last year's figure wasn't going to work. So I found a correlation in using the annual commitment that came out of the assessor's office, and that over a 5-year span, we collected somewhere between 98 and 100% of that committed amount. So I got the commitment for in October. So the bills went out this month. I know I got mine already. So I was able to have a baseline to use for an estimate for that. And that number wound up being about $240,000 more than what John Madden would have estimated us to use, largely as a result of trying to meet the excess levy figure that we have on the recap sheet, and because we can collect it. I wouldn't go that high if I didn't think we could collect it. Same goes with the motor vehicle excise. I found that we had generally collected anywhere from 96 to 99% of the commitments. There's usually 6 to 7 commitments a year. The big one comes out in February, which is way too late for the exercise that I'm doing here now. But again, I used a number that I am comfortable with. It's a number that's lower than what we had last year, which is even lower than averages from prior years, which is largely COVID related. So I'm comfortable with that number as well. And so the local receipts number is pretty high, higher than I'd like it to be, but it helps Article 2, which is what I wanted to try to do to close the gap. And in being able to shrink the excess levy capacity in the recap, I was also able to help out Article 2 as well. So the available funds with that big boost now shows us with a shortfall of a little over 469,000, which is a lot more manageable than it was before. One thing that I didn't mention last week, on line 14, where it says free cash available, you see that we've already been certified for a little over $1 million. I'm leaving that blank on purpose so that we don't have to rely on it, because I would like to use free cash for capital items and not have to rely on that for Article 2 unless it's break glass in case of emergency. And also line 18, the snow and ice deficit, I don't have anything entered there yet because who knows what's going to happen. Maybe we could put a placeholder in. The last 2 years have been pretty generous weather-wise. Who knows if it's going to stay that way. But that could offset the smaller amount that I have in new growth as an estimate that Bob kind of maybe gave us a little boost with a little while ago, where I have 300,000 in there, and that could be higher. As we had a little over 397 was the new growth for last year. So it's looking good, better than last week at least. So those local receipts numbers are finalized. The certification hearing is next week, so I can't change those anymore. But I am comfortable with what's there. And it's just got some work to do now with Article 2.
So one of the things that caught a few people's eye here on the committee is your adjustment to line 175, which is the operating expense for Whitman Hanson Regional High School.
Yep.
And your movement from the Madden recommendation from 5% to 3.5% in your, I guess, suggestion that it would move the budget closer to balanced. So, that's a pretty dramatic step, I guess. For someone on this committee, that's not a place to be taking money from. So can you more explain how you came to the justification for using that line?
So I initially came to the 5% number solely because that's what John Madden had suggested, and I had nothing else to go by, and I didn't really have anything else to use. It just was like this is what Matt recommended, let's see what happens. And then the longer it sat there, the more I heard from other people, and I didn't really hadn't thought of first that 5% to us would be a lot more than 5% to Hanson. And given that they rejected an override last year, I don't know if that's something that they're going to want to do again this year. So getting the sense that 5 was too high and was an impossibility, maybe not an impossibility, but I wanted to bring it down to something that was a little more realistic. That was a figure that could be met by both towns.
Where are you hearing this? Who you said these other people? Who are these other people? Because when we look at actual state numbers, the combined yield effort, 5% is a reasonable amount. And Hanson could have afforded it. They could have afforded it last year as they had the money afterwards. So who's saying that specifically?
I've heard from selectmen. I've heard John's.
What selectmen?
Randy.
I think that's where we're going to end up. That's my opinion. I think
The
that's
Madden-
where we're going to end
The
up.
Madden gave recommendations each year. The largest budget is the last one to come in, and what results is that we take from the largest budget, or we have had a series of 7 years in the past 3 years in which over $7 million has been essentially, which should have, mathematically, according to combined yield effort and proper funding, been going into schools that haven't. The schools are currently putting together the largest gathering under COVID. I really don't think this is the time to underfund or play games, because that could risk the health of our communities, our elderly communities. I just think that it's the same old bad game again. Put the 5% there. Either we're following Madden or we're not, and we're not picking and choosing.
I'm not underfunding it. I'm just, if I'm hearing from other people that 5 is too high, I'm just doing my job and saying it's not going to be 5.
Did the schools say that? Did the schools
Okay,
say
through the
5 is
chair.
too high?
Yeah, I think maybe we're just a little too early to be discussing specific line items. I just think, Ken, for the purpose of this committee, there is a 9-member committee here. So if you're hearing from somebody who has a recommendation on a specific line item, we should bring that to the full committee for discussion, that's all. Prior to making any major adjustments to Article 2, this is something that the full committee should be in discussion of, that's all. So, like I said, whether we end up there, whether we are using our budget to ensure Hanson can afford their own, to me is a bit of a stretch, to be perfectly honest with you. We had this issue with Hanson last year. The voters had their say, and we paid part of Hanson's tax bill. So going forward, I don't think we should be using our budget and making recommendations based on Hanson's ability to pay. I think we've all learned from that exercise that is not really the best way to build a budget. John.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment because I was one of the ones, in my opinion, that I said that's where I thought it would be. But I also, in reply back to Ken, when I saw it, that I think it needs to stay at 5 until the school committee tells us otherwise. So until we know, we should leave it at 5 because that's what Madden recommends. Until the school committee tells us otherwise, it should stay at 5%. In my opinion, just so you know where my opinion is coming from, I don't think that the school committee is going to pass a budget that has us with an assessment of 5%, just like they didn't last year. And I think they'll run into the same thing. But that, again, that's just my opinion. But at this point right now, I do believe that line should go back to 5%.
John, you make a really good point too. Is like we're at the beginning of this process. Let's let the schools make their presentation as well, and we'll go from there. So, Dave.
I concur with both Rosemary and John. The Madden report was unanimously voted in favor. The Board of Selectmen unanimously voted in favor of the Madden report and to follow all those recommendations. So I think it wouldn't be prudent for us to go against that recommendation. So I too recommend that we keep that number at 5 at this point.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, so Ken, if you could make that adjustment. Again, just remember that the Article 2 is a budget worksheet, and we can have an outlandish deficit all the way up to town meeting. If in fact we have the correct information, or the information as Dave and John and Rosemary all made clear, the recommendations of the consultant that the town hired should be used as a guide. And I really think that any deviation from that, I agree with everyone that spoke. We should have a long conversation before we deviate from those recommendations.
So
Okay.
I have the file open now. Changing it back to 5 adds about $240,000 to the deficit.
Yep. And we'll push that back to the override committee to make their deliberations on whether or not this town has a sustainable budget is going to be in part the result of the work that we have to do going forward. I mean, we have only met with 2 departments, and we have a long way to go on the budget. So I don't think we should look to balance it at this point. I think we should look to get all the information, hear from every department, including the biggest department, the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, before we make any recommendations for a permanent fixture on Article 2. That's all. Anybody else?
Ken, what's the number when you put it back to 5?
The line 175 or the deficit?
Line 175.
16, 135, 762.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so Chuck.
I just have a question for Ken. This is not Article 2 related. I was wondering, I had been working with Kathleen, the new recreation director,
Yep.
and she needed some information. I asked her to reach out to you. I thought you'd be the one to be able to get her the information on the revolving accounts for the recreation. Did
Yep.
she, and was that an accurate assessment by me?
It is an accurate assessment. I did send her some materials. I don't know if it was enough for what she was looking for. I'm pretty sure I know what she's asking, so I can send her more if she needs it.
Okay, yeah, I spoke with her last week. It's kind of new to her, so trying to help her out and get her numbers to come in a little differently. I don't think she realized that account was there and that she was going to be needing to fund some of her budget out of that.
Yeah, it was a lot to send her for that first. Looking back on it, it was a lot that I had sent her at first.
Yeah. All right, that's great. I was wondering maybe at some point next time you're in there, maybe if you wanted to send it to me also, in case if I needed to look at it and help her out.
Yep.
All right, great, thank you.
Rosemary, go
Just a
ahead.
quick question for Chuck and maybe Ken. The departments that were affected by COVID, like the recreation department, how are we going to handle the 2.5% or the Madden report with this unusual sort of circumstance? They didn't collect any money. They didn't. Is there any ideas on,
Well, that's a good question, because I know obviously even I think going forward, recreation is still a little bit not sure what's going to happen. And yeah, I don't know what kind of money she had left in that account. I know at one point not too long ago, I think it was fully funded, and they used quite a bit of that money for salaries. So it's a good question. They might not have collected anything, so she needs to know how much money is actually in there to be used, so she can make some kind of assessment going forward to what may happen this year.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Was it recreation specifically, or is like the Board of Health, or are there any other departments that you were?
Board of Health is going to be another one. They have requested a stay of execution on their meeting with the Finance Committee because they have some significant changes to their budget. And this is one of the things that in advance of our meeting tonight, I did discuss with the interim town manager today. So let me just run down the list of the things that I talked to her about, and maybe we just have a quick conversation for each one. We did try to get you on speaker. It was at lunchtime, so we missed you. So, Ken, just 4 points that I brought before Lisa because she was meeting with selectmen tonight. And one was the issue of the salaries that were submitted and the discussion that she could probably have with selectmen and the possible have a staff meeting or budget manager meeting to talk about budget managers holding their salaries to level funding. I think that's probably gonna be a condition of this budget, but again, that's something that we're not going to plug in, but we need to have a conversation about it because it's gonna, that'll have a pretty big, Ken, maybe for the next meeting, you could do a total on what that would affect the budget with if we level funded budget manager salaries. So that was one of the points that I made with Lisa Green today. Also, the status of the Board of Health. Apparently, they're going before the selectmen tonight to talk about the retirements and that type of thing. And Chuck, do you want to give the board an update of conversations that you had with the Board of Health?
Sure. Yeah, Barbara reached out to me not too long ago, the other day, and I guess there's semi-unexpected retirements. It looks like they're going to lose a couple of members, the administrative assistant, longtime employee, and I believe she said that the health inspector is intending to retire also, which I was a little surprised by, being a new hire not too long ago. But it definitely sounded like it was going to mess up their numbers or they needed to revamp them. So that was the reasoning for their asking for a delay in bringing their budget to us.
So following her email, I did send back a response. They were looking for rescheduling. So we had to put them at the end of the budget cycle. If somebody cancels this late, they're scheduled to be before the committee next week. So they're going to be on the docket for January 5th, which is our final budget manager meeting. So they got plenty of time to work out with discussions with selectmen on personnel and to get their budget a little bit more in order before they resubmit. The other question I had, it was answered by building commissioner today, was about the salary for him and whether or not he was seeking relief from the 555 that happened last year, and the answer to that obviously is no. And then I just basically gave her an update on the vacancy on our committee that has been since filled by John Noon. I haven't got any communication from the new member. I don't know that he's been sworn in yet. So I'll send him an email and find out what the status of that is. And then the final question that I had for Lisa was the COVID spending. So I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to watch the selectmen's meetings regarding COVID spending and the direction that the town is going. From what I understood from the past town administrator, selectmen, and Ken, maybe you can confirm this, but the finance committee has no input at all into what is submitted by the town for reimbursement for COVID expenses. The problem that I have, and I think I share with our treasurer, is the fact that the town is, kind of putting out money that they don't know whether or not they're going to get back. I mean, we've made some extraordinary purchases of an ambulance that we don't have confirmation that we're going to get reimbursed for. There are expenses that obviously are needed, and the COVID crisis is definitely something where we want to make sure we take advantage of money that is available, but I don't think we want to get the town exposed to expenses that we won't be recovering. So can you talk a little bit about what the mechanism is for getting these expenses on a list for reimbursement from the county?
So they have me put an Excel sheet together for invoices that we submit. They have to have a check has to be cut because you have to put a check number on that line as well. An invoice date, a check date, an amount, a vendor, and what it's used for. And all that goes on an Excel sheet. And that's one of probably 8 things that I have to send in with each submission. So I have to send in the invoices. I have to send in the payroll sheets. I have to send in the backup to the payroll, like a check register of the payroll, if you will. A check register of the invoices that we pay. I also have to send in an application, which is like a 35-page document, but I only have to sign off on 4 of those pages. And even if the application is the same, it's just the amount is different, but I have to send that application every time. I have to send our audited financial statements from the last fiscal year with every application. I have a list handy here, but it's escaped me. And I also, since I'm the authorized signer for those applications, I have to send in the letter from the board meeting, maybe a couple months ago, that authorized them to have me sign off on it. And I have to send that with each submission as well. So it's a pretty big package. The issue that we're having is the turnaround time. We were told 2 weeks back in June or July. The first submission took about 12 weeks to get to us. The second submission, we're on our 11th or 12th week now, and I still don't know if it has all been fully reimbursed to us. So there are 4 submissions now that I've sent to them that I'm waiting on. I'm sending them in weekly now because we have a deadline of December 30th. And I have to have invoices, I have to have check numbers, I have to have everything by December 30th, provided that they don't extend it to March 30th or 31st of next year, which has been rumored, but we're not going to count on it.
Okay.
So
Thank you. Al, you had something to add?
Yeah, Ken, just a question. How much labor and capital equipment have we bought so far? Do you know any idea? And what department is the biggest expense items?
To be honest, it's really like a huge pile of little things.
Like, do we have a rough idea of what we spent so far?
So far, like the town or
The town, yeah, absolutely.
Well,
the town?
We'll go through the town too.
Isn't there reimbursements somewhere around $900,000 that you're waiting on?
I am waiting on about 530,000.
All right.
The town as a whole has submitted about 565,000
All right.
up through last Thursday. The ambulance is about a little more than half of that. And so that's going all the way back to mid-March until now. So if you take the ambulance out, it's probably $270,000 over a span of 33 weeks within the town. So it's.
And what's the second, was it labor?
The second largest individual item is actually the online permitting. We have, so there's an FAQ page on their website that's specific. If enough people ask the same question, they tend to update their FAQ page as it goes. So I think number one, enough people have asked about online permitting that they just said, all right, here it is, it's good. Provided that it wasn't, so there are 3, I know I'm bouncing around all over the place, but there are 3 different like check boxes on the application that I make sure that each item that gets submitted follows. And one of them is that it has to not be a part of the most recently approved budget as of March 27th, 2020, which was not the FY21 budget because that wasn't approved as of March 27th. It's last year's budget. So even though the online permitting was part of FY21's budget, it hadn't been approved yet. So that's the reasoning that I'm using to submit for it and have it be approved, like the ambulance as well. It's like pins and needles waiting for the money to come in, but I don't think it's going to get bad.
Now, what about the schools? Last question. What about the schools? How much have they requested?
The
Roughly.
first submission was for 259,000, but that was our share of it. The second list, I'm trying to get a more detailed list of it. They haven't actually given me the documents. They've only given me a condensed one-page file but our share of that is a little over 864,000.
It's quite different, huh?
And that's items that haven't been ordered yet, like laptops. Laptops mostly is probably a little less than half of that. So it's, I need the stuff from them to submit it, and I've asked for something in more detail so I can see if it's stuff that I can submit that's going to be approved. And you know, times December 30th is coming pretty quick.
Hey Rick, have you talked to Selectmen all about helping Ken out with this? I mean, they want to actually. Did they buy it, Ken? Did they buy the computers yet?
The file that we saw, I'm pretty sure they bought the Chromebooks. I don't know if that's different from them calling them laptops, because there's the Chromebooks, I'm assuming, are for the students for the remote learning.
Right.
There's also laptops that they say they haven't ordered yet. And I don't know who those are for. This is part of the more information I'm trying to get.
Right.
I don't know if it's for the teachers.
Right.
I just don't know, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I don't want to spend too much time on this. All I really wanted to do is just
Thanks,
make the
Ken.
board aware that there are expenses that are hanging out there that,
Yeah.
you know, the town has yet to be reimbursed for. That's all. So again, you know, just as far as you know, Ken, the finance committee for no other town is involved in the process.
I don't know of any finance committee that's involved in other towns, to be
Okay.
honest.
Very good. All right. So those are the
Additional-
discussion items that I
quickly,
had with the,
Kathy is,
I just want to review 1 second, Rosemary. I just wanted to review that those are the discussion items that I brought before Lisa, just so we could just get an update, share information from selectmen to finance committee, from finance committee to selectmen. So, go ahead, Rosemary.
yeah, I was going to ask Miss Otina, who is our liaison to the schools and the source of where we should be getting our budgeting information from the schools, if the schools had said anything about a 3% budget to her.
No.
It doesn't, so
No,
just,
the schools haven't, quite honestly, the schools haven't even thought about fiscal 22. From my conversations with basically John Tuffy, I haven't received anything back from Jeff. They don't even know what fiscal school year 2021, 2022 is going to be. And I said, well, you're still going to have kids to teach and teachers that you'll have to pay to teach them. There's very little firm information coming from the schools right now. And I sat through last week's school committee meeting for 2 hours, and then I couldn't take it anymore. I went home. It's very frustrating.
I don't blame you. That was a pretty brutal meeting to watch. I watched it myself.
just
So-
sorry.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
On top of it. Well, I want to quickly caution. In past years, the school budget is the largest budget. In past years, the town budgets have gotten together and the schools have gotten a budget that didn't meet what they needed. I think it's really not responsible to solidify other budgets and not consider your largest budget. Keeping with the Madden report, keeping with the Madden recommendation really protects us and insulates us from that really, really poor misstep that happened in the past. And I hope that we aren't making up a number for the schools without hearing from them.
Okay, so we are scheduled for December 15th with the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District budget meeting. So Kathleen, I'm sure if you do have information that you get from the superintendent or from the school committee, I'm sure you'll share it with the rest of the committee.
I'll get it to you as soon as I can. I've asked the superintendent to identify a time where he and I can meet to discuss the next year's budget. But he's busy.
We all are.
Yes,
Yeah.
we are.
All right, thank you very much for that. And Rosemary, your comments. Anybody else have anything that they would like to bring up? Ken, we appreciate you being available for our meetings. I mean, it really helps us immensely, I think. If you have updated some of the budget documents that are attached to Article 2, perhaps you could send the updated copy to me and I'll distribute it to the rest of the committee.
And I sent you all the documents for the fire budget because I think they're meeting with you next week.
Yep.
Okay. And I sent you Board of Health too, not knowing that they were not meeting.
Right, yeah, so next week it'll just be the fire at 7:15. So, if you have questions regarding the fire budget, it'd be a good time to, formulate them within the next week so you have them prepared for our meeting with the chief.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Ken.
Yeah, I just
Okay,
want,
Chuck.
I just wanted to just thank Ken again because
Absolutely.
it's great. It's great to have him taking part in this process. We haven't had it in the past, and I think it's just, I mentioned it before, but I think it's really helpful. So thank you, Ken.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Yep, excellent. Thank you for your comments. All right, if there's no other business before the committee, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
One question, Rick, have you forwarded the fire budget information? That's another one I don't
I
see.
believe I did. As soon as Ken sent it to me, I forwarded, but I'll double check again. I'll
All right,
send it
thank you.
again anyway. I do have
Yeah, I
a
don't think
note
I
on
got
my page to send the fire department or refer you to the date that it was forwarded the first time.
Yeah, I don't know. Chuck.
So the
just said he
trouble is,
didn't have
like,
it.
with the police budget, it came 2 weeks ago, so you have to
Yeah.
go way back in the file to find it, So I'm sure it's around the 27th that it came out. But I'll send it first thing in the morning.
Thank you.
Well, my first thing in the morning,
Yeah.
not your first thing in the morning.
Is
You
there
made it a few.
Is there a department that has not provided a budget?
I don't think there's any department that has not,
Well,
according
the
to Ken.
schools haven't.
Without
Well,
the,
yeah, that's a biggie.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
Okay, so we have a motion. Al's making a motion. Kathleen is seconding. Round the table for adjournment. John,
Yes.
Dave,
yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Al,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Rosemary,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Thank you all for your participation. Samantha, as usual, thank you for taking very good notes. It helps a lot.